Good morning, and thanks for joining Road to the Summit, New Opportunities for a More Inclusive Americas. I'm Jason Marzak, the director of the Atlantic Council's Adrian Arsht Latin America Center. Today's event is part of a new partnership with the U.S. Department of State on the road to the 9th Summit of the Americas in 2022. It's the first of 4 campaigns that will generate fresh and inclusive ideas to inform and provide inputs to next year's summit, a critical regular gathering around the hemisphere that has gained even more importance as the last couple of years has shown now how connected we all are across this hemisphere. Today's discussion and future ones coincide with a public campaign with the hashtag Road to the Summit, or in Spanish, Camino a la Cumbre, launched alongside our growing list of regional partners to encourage inclusive and diverse participation from across the Americas in the lead up to the summit. So that our discussions truly include and respond to the diverse perspectives across the Americas, we've collaborated with several regional organizations who have vast connections and relationships in their local communities. Thanks to the Salvadoran Foundation for Economic and Social Development, FUSADES, the Argentine Council on International Relations, CARI, Mobilizatorio of Colombia, the Brazilian Center for International Relations, CEBRI, the Caribbean Policy Research Institute, CAPRI, as well as Florida International University. This is a growing list, and we look forward to bringing in even more partners as we continue with this campaign. The discussion today reflects widespread regional outreach as the conversations were informed by many actors across the hemisphere who shaped the questions, the ideas, and the concerns that will be raised and addressed today. These conversations are all the more important as the United States hosts the Summit of the Americas next year for the first time since 1994, again, coming at such a pivotal moment in the hemisphere. The COVID pandemic, climate change, and questions about democracy are present and straining livelihoods across the Americas. These challenges are not bound by geographic borders. While some feel the effects worse than others, the scope of the challenges we face require hemispheric consensus and cooperation. We see this cooperation in pockets, such as the recent North American Leaders Summit and the role CARICOM played to advocate for equitable vaccine access. But now, with the Summit of the Americas around the corner, regional cooperation must be grander and has to include all willing actors. And here, the participation of the Caribbean is especially vital as we continuously recognize through the Adrian Arsht Latin America Center's Caribbean Initiative. Governments, business communities, and civil society across the Americas have a role to play. And at the national level, all voices and perspectives must be at the table. This is why today's event holds such great importance. Tackling new solutions to strengthen democracy through greater participation of women, vulnerable groups, youth, and others is a future of true community and true inclusion. And to discuss more about this, we have 2 wonderful conversations lined up over the next hour and a half that will provide new ideas based on the input that many of you virtually participating have helped to shape. Our first discussion will focus on key challenges and solutions to democracy. It'll be moderated by journalist Carla Angola from EVE TV Miami, and the panel will include Claudia Umania, the president of the Salvadoran Foundation for Economic and Social Development, and also former special ambassador for trade negotiations at the Ministry of Economy in El Salvador, Alana Rizzo, the Government Affairs and Public Policy Manager for Brazil and Emerging Markets at YouTube, and Cecilia Vilcas, the Program Manager at the Young America's Business Trust, an international organization that works in cooperation with the Organization of American States. Then our conversation will shift to the role of women in safeguarding democracy and will be moderated by Diego Area, the Deputy Director of the Adrian Arsht Latin America Center. Our conversation will include Panama's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Erica Muniz, who is an example of female leadership across the Americas. It will also include Dr. Tamika Pert, the Director of the National Shelter Unit at Jamaica's Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment, and Sport. Also, Ambassador Nirmala Badrisingh, the former Surinese ambassador to the United States and former Minister of Foreign Affairs. And will also include Ambassador Isadora Zubillaga, the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs and Special Envoy to France for the interim government of Venezuela. If you have any questions during the event, feel free to ask them using the Twitter hashtag Road to the Summit or Camino a la Cumbre, or you can also use the Zoom chat box. Now it's my great pleasure to introduce the U.S. National Summit Coordinator and Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Western Hemisphere Affairs, Kevin O'Reilly. Das O'Reilly is a leader in advancing key issues to inform and advance the summit process. And I know through my many conversations with Das O'Reilly how committed he is personally to a very inclusive, participatory, and successful summit next year. Kevin, thanks for all your great work. The floor is over to you.
Thank you, Jason. And I want to thank the Atlantic Council and the Arsh Center and you for organizing this event here for us today and serving as a partner with our Department of State in this first in this series of policy roundtables as we start on the road for to the 9th Summit of the Americas. So it's an honor to share this virtual stage with this distinguished group of thought leaders. And as summit host, we appreciate this chance to have these roundtables, to provide a forum to hear the perspectives of experts like the folks participating in today's panels as they discuss the questions and concerns that so many people in this hemisphere of ours have about what the leaders of our region can accomplish when they gather next year. And I want to make clear that we learn from this just as much as anyone else, and it helps inform how we prepare for this great event. Now, every summit that the region organizes has to respond to the needs and the priorities of the hemisphere at the time that it takes place. And we here in the United States, we're committed to bringing our region together to address all the challenges that we share and work, as Jason was saying, on inclusive approaches to these priorities at this most unusual but so critical time. When the region's leaders met in Miami at the first Summit of the Americas in 1994, they placed strengthening of democracy and the fight against corruption at the heart of their efforts and of their priorities. And these principles, these still stand at the center of what we're trying to do now. And it's a great opportunity to reaffirm our dedication to democracy, which has been part of each and every leader's commitment for every summit, including when 20 years past, when leaders directed the creation of the Inter-American Democratic Charter at the 2001 summit in Quebec City in Canada. So, 20 years past, our nation's committed to promote and defend democracy across the region through that charter. And it remains a live challenge for every generation. It remains a live challenge for us today. This also marks the 25th anniversary of the Inter-American Convention Against Corruption, which leaders called for at that very first summit in 1994. And at the most recent summit that hosted by the government of Peru in 2018, governments renewed that commitment and drove regional and global attention to the costs that corruption imposes on our societies, on our democracies, on our ability to effectively govern, and the costs it imposes on the economies of our region. And they committed to work to overcome those challenges through the Lima commitment. Now, as we mark these anniversaries, we can celebrate, with a few exceptions, that democratic governance in our region has delivered a period of unprecedented prosperity, security, and stability, albeit unequally. So when we take a look at our last 2 decades of work together, we know that we still have work to do. We all need to focus on the fact that people living in democracies in our hemisphere today, sometimes too often, in fact, sense that their governments do not do enough to address the challenges they face in their daily lives, that they expect more in terms of constructing the foundations and extending the protections that they judge due to them so that they can pursue their aspirations and meet the expectations for civic engagement and the ability to freely choose their leaders and engage with them. Now, in a couple of days, 9th and 10th of December, our president, Joseph Biden, will host many of the leaders of the Americas and many leaders from around the world at the Summit for Democracies. Now, this event offers an opportunity for governments, civil society, and the private sector to work together to move forward, make new commitments to establish more equitable and inclusive democratic practices, and to hold ourselves accountable for the public commitments we've already made. And it's an opportunity to initiate new and bold commitments to fight and address corruption, defend our institutions and our citizens against authoritarianism, and usher in a new era of inclusive growth, equality, and respect for human rights for all citizens, and especially here in our hemisphere in the Americas. The United States will host both this Summit for Democracy and the 9th Summit of Americas with a sense of humility. As a democratic country, we don't have all the answers, but we work with openness and transparency to work together, work here at home and in our region to overcome our challenges and to work with counterparts across the region to support that kind of inclusive democratic governance that we all aspire to for ourselves and for our citizens. You know, it's you'll often hear Americans say, one of our founding documents talks about, creating, in order to create a more perfect union. We always know and we always accept that here at home and throughout the region, improving democratic governance is a task for each generation, and it's work that's never done, but we work to make it more perfect. Now, throughout the summit of this America's process, we've heard loud and clear from governments and from non-governmental organizations, from the business community, from all sorts of folks that this 9th summit needs to respond to pressing needs, and it needs to create more inclusive opportunities, and it needs to act quickly. Across the hemisphere, citizens increasingly demand more effective, equitable, and accountable governance. Formal input has proven vital and will prove vital to ensure summit priorities reflect the needs of the people of our hemisphere. And we support the participation of independent civil society and private sector representatives throughout the region in the summit process. We need to be pushed. We all need to be pushed to pay attention to issues, big old institutions like governments might sometimes overlook, and to be held accountable to meet the high standards that our citizens demand of us. Ensuring that input is representatives, we encourage partners to help us in the effort to bring more diverse voices into this hemispheric-wide dialogue. This 9th summit will take place in a very different world than when we last gathered at a summit in Lima just a short time ago in 2018. We're all working together to get this global pandemic under control. And we know that our hemisphere took a beating. The pandemic hit this part of the world harder than almost anywhere else. And communities and economies are working today and have work ahead of them to rebuild and recover. The pandemic exacerbated and revealed inequalities in health systems and education, and it accelerated a certain skepticism among many citizens of our nations that governments have not lived up to expectations. We know that democracies plays an essential role in delivering the development and opportunities our people need, and that we have the requirement to do this and bring these results equitably and in a sustainable manner. As we prepare to host this next summit, restoring and bolstering confidence in democratic institutions is absolutely critical for our hemisphere. The democratic systems of our region and the challenge before us of ensuring inclusive economic growth, calling people in from the margins, as they say. This is not these aren't static problems, and none of this is guaranteed. We need to work together continuously to work towards these goals. We have, we think, a generational opportunity to both renew the foundational democratic commitments of this summit process and to use the new tools at our disposal today to ensure that governments better serve their people. Technologies, innovation in areas like e-governance, we think can better connect citizens with basic services, create greater transparency to combat corruption that undermines growth, and ensure transparency as well in processes ranging from elections to public procurement. Still, investing in democracy is not just a matter of strengthening civil and political rights, but also strengthening people's economic and social rights, renewing attention to labor standards, improving education and health systems, promoting equality and inclusion, and increasing economic opportunity. These investments require transparent, open processes that allow committed, intelligent, diverse, and energetic voices to raise concerns up, to inspire and promote change, and to work together to ensure a better future for our citizenries, I guess I should say. I look forward to hearing such voices today as we kick off this series of discussions on the road to the Summit of the Americas, and as we work collectively to ensure a stronger and more inclusive democratic hemisphere for all the people of the Americas. Thank you for joining us and for sharing your valuable insights and ideas, and I look forward to the rest of the discussion. Thank you very, very much.
Carla, you can begin your panel.
Okay, good morning. Thank you, Jason, so much, and all the team. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for this kind invitation to speak about a subject that steals our sleep and worries us all, democracy. And thank you, ladies, for agreeing to join us in this panel. Our team is key challenges and new solutions to democracy. And my first question is, to Alana, some of the challenges facing democracy over the past few years are leading us to rethink our approaches to how we provide basic freedoms and rights to citizens across in the Americas. In 1 minute, if it's possible, what is the number one challenge facing democracies across the hemisphere? As we think about this, who is the most affected by democratic backsliding, and how important is it to include them in solutions going forward? Alana, I'll start with you.
Thank you, Carla. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here with all of you. Thank you, Atlantic Council, for the kind invitation. It's interesting to see the next panel is going to talk about female role, but
Yeah.
our panel is only female. So it's great to be here with my colleagues, and thank you so much. I'm going to go back a little bit on your question because I think Kevin talked a lot about this. The world and the Americas are facing such a challenging times considering the impact of COVID-19 and the economic downturn that affect our region. In our region, we are seeing inequality, a long time issue rising. And for me, this is one of the most concerning and urgent issues as it has a long-term impact in our society. And it's important to say that inequality persists, not only on income, but also on gender gap, discrimination, and one of the most worrisome for long-term inequality trends, learning and education. So I think this one is one of the most urgent issues that we have to look at.
Voy a seguir con Claudia. Me encantó, por cierto, Claudia en su discurso cuando asumió el cargo, que ahora detenta, que decía que el combate contra la pobreza, contra la desigualdad, requieren las preguntas más difíciles a los gobiernos, que esos gobiernos deben rendir cuentas y que la transparencia es el oxígeno de la democracia, ¿no? Un poco rememorando ese discurso y combinándolo con esta pregunta del mayor reto que tiene nuestro sistema que tanto queremos proteger, ¿cuál sería para usted? Bienvenida.
Gracias, Carla, y gracias también por haberme permitido estar en este panel tan interesante. Aquí la palabra clave es la confianza. Cuando hablabas justamente de que la transparencia es el oxígeno de la democracia, es que no podemos permitir que se nos corroa con la corrupción. Y por supuesto que la democracia nunca la podemos dar por sentada. Aún con su fragilidad se debe de enfrentar con más democracia, con más diálogo, con más evidencia, pluralidad de opiniones. Sabemos que se puede retroceder décadas de trabajo en fortalecimiento de las instituciones en cuestión de días. ¿Y por qué? Porque a veces la frustración hace que los ciudadanos y ciudadanas del hemisferio quieran cortar las esquinas, que te quieras comer procesos. Y esa ansiedad genera el deterioro de la institucionalidad. Y es cuando las mismas no han podido responder a los problemas más acuciantes de la sociedad, atender a los más vulnerables, a los marginados. Y debemos de trabajar de una manera colaborativa y, por supuesto, no caer en la tentación de la polarización y el lenguaje divisivo, sino que tenemos que estabilizar la democracia en el hemisferio a través de la co-creación de soluciones innovadoras y también pertinentes para esta época de la digitalización.
Voy con Cecilia. Cecilia representa quizás a la población más joven de nuestras sociedades y a veces creemos que nuestros sistemas están viciados porque se toman decisiones públicas o son los mismos de siempre quienes toman esas decisiones públicas. Cecilia, ¿cuál es el mayor reto para ustedes? Porque quienes quizás vivimos en sistemas democráticos no tenemos presente que ese sistema es frágil, vulnerable y que lo podemos perder. Y básicamente se pierde cuando hay frustración por parte de la población. ¿Qué nos diría, Cecilia? Bienvenida también.
Muchas gracias, Carla. Es un honor estar aquí con ustedes y también agradezco la invitación por parte del Atlantic Council. A mí me gustaría comenzar destacando que el sustento de toda democracia está en la ciudadanía en su totalidad. Entonces, desde mi perspectiva, uno de los mayores retos que tenemos actualmente va aunado a la desigualdad y sobre todo a la inclusión. Dado que está en juego el bienestar de toda la sociedad en su conjunto, las posibles soluciones deben ser inclusivas para todos y sabemos que existen diversos grupos que necesitan ser atendidos e incluidos en el diálogo, tales como mujeres, que precisamente es uno de los temas que vamos a discutir hoy, juventud, personas afrodescendientes, personas indígenas, personas con discapacidad y otras comunidades marginadas que se encuentran en la región y en todo el mundo. Tiempo atrás, el hablar de democracia era considerado un tema de personas mayores, en el cual como jóvenes teníamos poca o nula incidencia, participación e interés. El día de hoy, los jóvenes somos la fuerza del diálogo, del cambio y de la innovación en nuestro entorno. Lo hemos visto en diversas manifestaciones democráticas que se dan en América Latina, que se han dado en años recientes, donde la juventud hemos generado incidencia en los procesos democráticos. Entonces, pues me gustaría resaltar este desafío y, digamos, estas comunidades marginadas que deben incluirse al diálogo. Hemos visto cómo la pandemia ha exacerbado todas las desigualdades y que precisamente se ha mencionado para ciertos grupos dentro de ellos y resaltando bastante la juventud y las mujeres, quienes nos hemos visto afectados en la pérdida de empleo, de educación, de actividad económica, dentro de otros aspectos. Así que bueno, pues para culminar mi intervención y no extenderme, me gustaría también resaltar la importancia que hay en crear una sociedad resiliente, inclusiva y sostenible, que nos permita a todos ejercer nuestros derechos como seres humanos y como grupos sociales, donde no únicamente seamos receptores, sino también proactivos.
Gracias, Cecilia. Alana, social media and other communications mediums have dramatically changed the landscape of our everyday lives, including how we interact with the government and each other. How has social media allowed people to build digital communities. How can citizens use digital media to elevate their concerns, build consensus, and hold government leaders accountable?
Thanks, Carla. I think this is a really interesting question because the open internet has transformed society in incredible and different ways. And YouTube's mission is to give everyone a voice and show them the world. So we have 2 billion users around the globe, and YouTube's open and accessible platform makes it possible for diverse creators to grow, create new opportunities, and have the right to belong. The internet has opened the door for people to participate, and opportunity is no longer limited to only to those who are selected by a gatekeeper. So anyone can participate, and everyone does, from a comedian to a citizen journalist to a politician. An open platform also means opportunity for those who are underrepresented, like Cecilia just mentioned, in traditional media, including those from our remote areas, people of all abilities, races, languages, sexuality, and gender expression. So I believe this multiplicity of voices build better democracies, better societies, and allow people to debate, question, listen to new perspectives, and learn from each other.
Gracias, Alana. Cecilia, regreso contigo porque me gustaría que respondieras la misma pregunta, pero desde la perspectiva de la juventud. Los jóvenes son quienes obviamente mejor manejan el espacio digital. Tú naciste con este boom del Internet, todas las innovaciones que han surgido desde ese momento. ¿Cómo crees que esta realidad puede potenciarse, pero en todo caso para visibilizar ideas que sean realmente innovadoras, nuevas en ese futuro? ¿Cómo reducir esa brecha de acceso al mundo digital? Pareciera que hay una discusión que se mantiene en las calles de nuestros países y otra en las redes sociales, porque no todos tienen acceso a Internet, a la conectividad o a dispositivos tecnológicos. ¿Qué nos diría, Cecilia?
Muchas gracias, Carla. Primero que nada, decir que es un tema bastante interesante y del cual podemos discutir, sin duda. Así que, pues me gustaría destacar que el espacio digital nos ha abierto canales para continuar el diálogo y como jóvenes nos hemos adaptado rápidamente. Como tú lo dijiste, nosotros ya nacimos con este chip incluido. Entonces, pues hemos usado las redes no solo para comunicarnos entre sí, sino para empoderarnos como juventud, creando nuevas comunidades, generando mensajes y propuestas para incidir en la sociedad. Actualmente, nosotros como juventud vemos a los medios digitales como herramientas cívicas que nos permiten comunicar acciones y conectar con tomadores de decisiones y líderes de la región, expresando nuestras perspectivas, propuestas y soluciones en torno a las problemáticas más apremiantes. Me gustaría resaltar incluso un ejemplo del cómo los medios digitales nos han permitido mantener un canal activo para esta discusión. Y bueno, es que siendo coordinadora del Foro de Jóvenes de las Américas, una plataforma oficial de participación juvenil en los procesos de las cumbres de las Américas, que desde el año 2005, año con año, brinda diversos canales de consulta para que la juventud sea parte de las prioridades y mandatos de la región. Y que, bueno, a inicios de la pandemia se vio lesionada, puesto que la juventud participaba a través de diálogos de juventud que inicialmente se llevaban a cabo en un formato presencial. Entonces, pues sabiendo que, y debido a las medidas de contingencia que tuvimos, diversos diálogos se tuvieron que cancelar y en el mejor de los casos suspender hasta nuevo aviso, que pues la pandemia ya nos ha tomado más de tiempo. Sin embargo, gracias a una rápida adaptación de la metodología y sobre todo a estos canales digitales, a plataformas virtuales, nos fue posible continuar brindando estos espacios de discusión para que la juventud interactuara y discutiera y nos hiciera saber sus perspectivas. Así que, pues, como jóvenes, mostramos esta adaptación y sobre todo el poder de convocatoria que tenemos en redes. Adicionalmente, me gustaría también mencionar algunas estrategias, herramientas para, digamos, brindar estos canales a la mayor población posible, a toda la sociedad en su conjunto, dentro de los cuales se encuentra, pues claro, dar un acceso asequible al Internet y también, sobre todo, los programas de alfabetización digital, que como Alana ya lo mencionaba, es súper importante capacitar a la sociedad y a las comunidades más alejadas.
¿Qué tema tan importante? Y voy con Claudia, porque en el 2019, antes de la pandemia, muchos gobiernos, incluso en Washington, D.C., no estaban tan familiarizados con el mundo digital. Quienes hemos sido reporteros de medios digitales, muchas veces llevábamos un teléfono con un trípode y nos decían, that's not even a camera. Muchas veces como que no comprendían que sí, que ese mundo se estaba moviendo, y siento que la pandemia aceleró todo eso y los gobiernos tuvieron que montarse en esta ola, ¿no? Ahora en Washington DC es más fácil hacer entrevistas a través de Zoom y tener estos debates, obviamente, online. Así que la misma pregunta, pero desde la perspectiva quizás, Claudia, de la sociedad civil.
Muchísimas gracias. Como tú muy bien dices y lo decían mis predecesoras, básicamente por esta pandemia también la virtualidad transformó todas las acciones colectivas y se han sustituido por formas más novedosas, más cercanas, y por supuesto las redes sociales explotaron. Y debemos de mencionar algo que a mí me parece muy interesante, y es el tema de que se empezaron a generar narrativas sobre los aconteceres y se les ha dado, hay nuevos matices por precisamente la gestión de los metadatos, que son los que ahora impulsan y promueven las políticas públicas. Entonces, ¿cómo debemos de interpretar la realidad? Y así como hay elementos muy positivos, también debemos de decir que para que una democracia prospere necesitamos un mínimo de verdad compartida. Y para poderlo hacer, pues hay que fortalecer a la democracia, hay que evitar la concentración de poder y que va causando los autoritarismos, porque de lo contrario se puede deteriorar todo este mundo nuevo. Y debemos de privilegiar estos ecosistemas de información, que los ciudadanos sí se interesen por la cosa pública. Y déjame decirte, para los centros de pensamiento, todo este nuevo mundo es sencillamente un gran reto. Debemos de servir de buenos traductores de lo que informan buenas políticas públicas, pero también teniendo el pulso de la población. Así que debemos de hacer este acercamiento constante, reconociendo, como muy bien decía Cecilia, que en este momento los jóvenes, que son la mayoría de la población del hemisferio, también la forma en que consumen la información, en que hasta las horas en que se conectan, la narrativa, el mensaje, todo tiene que ser muy especializado, y por eso el desafío como centros de pensamiento del hemisferio también es importante, y debemos de transformarnos y ser muy, muy creativos para introducir los temas de la democracia, llenarla de contenido para todas estas nuevas generaciones.
Demasiado vital lo que acabas de señalar, Claudia, porque quienes vivimos en democracia jamás pensamos que la podemos perder. Y justo en esa frustración de la población es en donde se aprovechan quienes quieren destruir los sistemas de libertades. Voy con Cecilia de nuevo. Tú representas no el futuro, el presente de este hemisferio. A lo largo, obviamente, de nuestra región hay decenas de movimientos, organizaciones de jóvenes, quienes ya están construyendo, no quieren ser espectadores, están presentando soluciones innovadoras a todos estos retos que estamos discutiendo hoy y que los afectan de manera directa. ¿Cómo pueden los gobiernos, Cecilia, la empresa privada, conectar con estas conversaciones del futuro? ¿Cómo podemos, como bloque regional, porque esto es algo que nos compete a todos los países del hemisferio, aprovechar esa visión fresca que ustedes tienen?
Qué buena pregunta, Carla. Muchas gracias. Primero que nada, resulta vital continuar brindando y fortaleciendo espacios como este de participación para los jóvenes, camino al proceso de cumbres y en la propia cumbre. También debemos mantener un canal activo de comunicación entre los diversos actores y de diálogo, así como una propuesta clave es formalizar mecanismos de seguimiento sostenibles que nos permitan dar continuidad a las prioridades que establecemos, aún después de que termine el mandato de los líderes en cuestión. Sabemos que la cumbre es un evento muy importante, pero también resulta relevante el más allá de la cumbre, es decir, el dar seguimiento a todo lo que se establezca en la propia cumbre y que, digamos, tenga aplicabilidad o resultados tangibles. Entonces, son algunas de las medidas A la fecha, desde YBT, hemos trabajado estrechamente con la Secretaría de Cumbres de las Américas, con los Estados miembros de la OEA, con la OEA misma, para brindar diversos programas de apoyo a la juventud, como lo son el Foro de Jóvenes de las Américas, que ya les mencioné, y algunos otros. Dentro de ellos también me gustaría recapitular el programa Competencias, Talento e Innovación de las Américas, conocido como TIC Américas, a través del cual nosotros impulsamos también el emprendimiento de la región y impulsamos la energía que los jóvenes tienen, trayendo soluciones innovadoras a los problemas más apremiantes. Adicionalmente, me gustaría mencionar 2 propuestas clave para escucharnos y trabajar con nosotros, que recientemente fueron presentadas por el Secretario General de las Naciones Unidas mediante el informe Nuestra Agenda Común, y se basan primero en eliminar las barreras de participación política que existen para estas poblaciones vulnerables, para los jóvenes, y promover la creación de empleos. La inversión en juventud y el diseño de políticas públicas que impulsen nuestro rol es trascendental. Ya lo hemos visto, y como Claudia lo ha mencionado, somos una parte de la población con gran poder de convocatoria y con una buena representación. Entonces, el definir prioridades, elevar soluciones tangibles y avanzar hacia la cooperación es indispensable para trabajar entre los diversos actores.
Bueno, Cecilia, la buena noticia es que, ya que tú mencionas la relevancia de hacer seguimiento a todo esto que se discute aquí y no que se lo lleve el viento, es que justo está aquí como testigo vigilante la señora Conte para después nutrir con todo este debate la Cumbre de las Américas. Entiendo que todo este camino a la cumbre tiene ese sentido, para alimentar lo que los países deben también incorporar a su discusión. Y voy con Claudia porque la pregunta sería: ¿cómo están trabajando las organizaciones sociales, civiles, para apoyar, para visibilizar la voz de los jóvenes? ¿De qué manera lo están haciendo para tener ese ejemplo de lo que ustedes realizan, ¿no? Día a día.
Gracias. Bueno, déjenme que les cuente que en PUSAES tenemos unos programas como Creo, que es específicamente para jóvenes, y me encanta porque son los jóvenes traduciendo mensajes complejos. A ver, debemos de entender que este tema de la democracia a veces lo hemos tenido muy acaparado los abogados, los académicos. Entonces necesitamos traducir esos mensajes complejos, enamorar de por qué importa la democracia, hacerlo de maneras creativas. Y entonces, a ver, para que exista democracias en el hemisferio, pues tenemos que tener a demócratas. Y adentro de los jóvenes existe esa vocación porque son los sueños de construir un mejor futuro, de sociedades prósperas, los que debemos seguir acompañando. Lo que no podemos permitir, y eso es lo que hacemos en PUSAES, es que la desesperanza haga que los jóvenes lo que tengan listo es su bolsita para emigrar. Eso es lo que no podemos permitir, que nuestro mejor talento se vaya. Así que la creatividad es a la orden del día. Hay programas, por ejemplo, tenemos uno que se llama Academia Democracia, y es seccionar todos estos grandes principios y valores y tratar de formar una cultura cívica.
Brillante, Claudia. Voy con Alana. Alana, what is the next step for the younger generation and youth programs? What role will social media and other technologies play in raising awareness about their concerns and some of the solutions they have already put forward?
Yes, and I think the most amazing component of this is having the possibility to listen to young voices like Cecilia that we're listening right now. So it opened the space for people to participate. And I think, like Cecilia just mentioned and Claudia just mentioned, the youth has seen this potential and they're using social media to spread their messages. So we know how crucial it is, information in our region, transparency in our region. So an open platform, I think, enables people to look out for those informations, for different voices, empowering citizens to make informed decisions. In the end, that's what we want, right? People to make informed decisions. And I think digital technologies can be a powerful tool for improving public policy, incomes, productivity, and economic growth. However, simply focusing on generating access to digital technologies, such as driving internet penetration, is not sufficient to leverage their benefits. We need to invest in policies, we need to invest in product, we need to invest in building new voices and making possible that new voices present to the world. So, and now I think when I think about our region, we know we have the most amazing entrepreneur voices in the energy that we see in the world. So we see that happening in the platform. This year, we launched a YouTube Impact Report in Brazil to demonstrate YouTube contribution to the Brazilian creative economy. And we saw not only the economic data, that it's really interesting, it's open, everyone can see it, but Brazilians talking about the importance of a diverse ecosystem. And I think that connects a lot to what our youth wants, a more diverse platform, a more diverse possibility of voices. They want to be participating on the big debates. So I think there's a couple of data that shows this, how important it is. 75% of the creators in Brazil said the YouTube community encouraged them to create diverse and innovative content. And I think that connects a lot to your question. Another component that I think is really interesting for this research, 78% of users agree that YouTube allows them to view content they couldn't access through traditional media. So showing how important it is to have this different voices, this different content in our platform to build better democracies and to build better debates in our democracy.
So sorry for that. Voy a regresar con Claudia. Claudia, considerando que la sociedad civil tiene un rol que jugar para encontrar esas vías para fortalecer las instituciones democráticas, ha estado hablando muchísimo de eso, ¿no? De lo consciente que debe estar el gobierno de los flagelos como la corrupción, cómo desaniman, cómo frustran y obviamente cómo desencantan a la población. Cómo esas instituciones pueden ser fuertes para que la población sienta siempre confianza en ellas, que van a velar por sus derechos. Con los retos de hoy, organizaciones locales son fundamentales, obviamente, como la que representas para mayor conexión entre gobiernos, gobiernos locales, regionales, nacionales, sector privado, la gente. ¿Cómo puede la sociedad civil apoyar en este proceso de recuperar confianza en la democracia, pero también aprender a elegir? Porque decía bien Claudia, que la democracia va a existir si existen demócratas, si son los demócratas quienes controlan y tienen el liderazgo. Adelante, Claudia.
Gracias. Bueno, tú presentas el gran desafío y es que, bueno, se ha ido deteriorando la democracia también en la región. Hay una cantidad de estudios, el Barómetro de las Américas, que demuestran que también lo que ha pasado es que hay voces que vienen y lo prometen todo, que a veces son unos lenguajes muy carismáticos. Y por eso es que las Américas deben de tener procesos de detección temprana de alarmas. Porque cuando se están dando el desmantelamiento de las instituciones de justicia y de contraloría, el atropello a la libertad de expresión y de prensa, el cierre del espacio cívico para los defensores de derechos humanos, pues la misma sociedad civil se ve muy afectada, así como el periodismo independiente. Y todo esto da la pauta para el surgimiento de regímenes híbridos o aún autoritarios en la región. Debemos entonces, como muy bien lo decía el señor embajador en la parte inicial, nuestras naciones también tienen que saber que la sociedad civil también está al acecho, pero por eso es que existen también los organismos internacionales, el resto de la sociedad civil de las Américas, para encontrar esa solidaridad, ese acompañamiento y que haya una mayor, digamos, ese enfoque permanente de no permitir retrocesos. Y cuando los existan, que a través de todas estas formas innovadoras, pues se pueda trabajar de una forma colaborativa, porque toda esta cumbre ese es el objetivo, de poner el dedo en el renglón, en ese renglón de la democracia, y que no lo pueden hacer o solo la sociedad civil o solo los gobiernos, sino que lo tenemos que hacer juntos, colaborativamente y además intergeneracionalmente.
Estamos perfectos de tiempo, les agradezco, señoras, que hayan sido tan consecuentes con los tiempos que les hemos pedido, porque la discusión así ha podido ser muy dinámica. Solo me quedan dos preguntas, una para Alana y otra para Cecilia. Alana, how can technology and social media aid this? Especially what is the role of technology in working with civil society to address all and new challenges, such as promoting accountability during elections and combating disinformation?
I think Claudia's comment is really important. We can't do anything alone. Those complex issues, we need to work on deep collaboration. Governments, private sector, and civil society should work together to address those challenges. At the same time, build new opportunities for those new voices, or for those voices that are not being represented. And when we talk about technology, we also need to have a comprehensive solution between the policy that we have, the product, and how our system works. When I think about YouTube, we came up with the 4 R's of responsibility. And pretty much everything we do is capture on those 4 R's. You talk about, Carla, about fighting misinformation. So we remove content that violates our policies, because we want to make sure that we have a safe community for people to express themselves. When you think about the other R on our 4 R's is the raise. We raise authoritative information in the platform to make sure people have information and more context to make well-informed decisions. And here we work in close collaboration with journalists, experts, and authorities. When we think about the 3rd R is the reduce, which is the content that technically meets the policy, but doesn't really meet the spirit of the platform, or is very low quality content, and we don't want people to engage with that. And finally, the reward. That's how we monetize content and how we build opportunities for those creators. So that's a little bit of how we look for our responsibility and how we're approaching it. But we're trying to find the right balance between freedom of expression and responsibility. We know how important it is to draw that line in the correct place, and we need dialogue to make sure we're doing the right thing. So it's really important, this collaboration between private sector, governments, authorities, civil society, and creators to make sure we're doing the right thing.
Thank you, Alana. Cecilia, sé que esta pregunta no la teníamos preparada, pero me genera muchísima curiosidad saber qué es la democracia para ti y para tu generación. Me parece una buena manera de cerrar esta discusión. ¿Cecilia está allí?
Disculpa, Lana, no pude escuchar bien. Carla,
Sí,
¿podrías repetirme?
no, que sé que esta pregunta no la teníamos quizás contemplada, pero me encantaría saber qué significa para ti la democracia, para ti, para la generación que tú representas. ¿Cómo se refieren a ella?
La democracia, visto desde un enfoque de juventud, para nosotros es el permitir y el tener los canales y los recursos para que toda la ciudadanía participe dentro de la toma de decisiones y prioridades no solo del hemisferio, sino del mundo, dentro de nuestras comunidades y nuestras propias naciones. ¿Cómo? Fortaleciendo el diálogo, habiendo transparencia e impulsando mecanismos de involucramiento y seguimiento, que ya lo mencionaba antes, para llevar a cabo este correcto funcionamiento, una buena democracia. Nosotros tenemos un enfoque muy detallado en cuestión de la inclusión de grupos diversos para la toma de decisiones y sobre todo para la representatividad en los líderes es clave para nosotros. También me gustaría mencionar que agregar también a una pregunta anterior, que fue la parte de canalizar nuestra energía y nuestra fuerza a través del emprendimiento y las capacitaciones. Es muy importante invertir en la juventud y en programas que ya apoyan el emprendimiento en la región y el impulsar, el fortalecer todos estos canales digitales que tenemos ahora y frente a la pandemia, que debemos seguir manteniendo y seguir adentrándonos a estos canales de accesibilidad.
Gracias, Cecilia. Gracias, Alana. Gracias, Claudia. Something that has me very excited is that everything we discussed is being heard by the organizers of the Summit of the Americas in December, so that from now on, we are complying with that premise of incorporating voices. Ahora le voy a dar, obvio, un honor para mí haber estado en este panel, le voy a dar la palabra a Diego Area. Él es el subdirector de estrategia del Centro para América Latina del Adrian Arts. Adelante, Diego.
Gracias, Carla. Gracias, Alana, Cecilia y Claudia por esta excelente conversación. La verdad, da gusto escuchar a lideresas diversas de nuestra región. Quiero compartir con ustedes, con los que se conectan hoy vía Zoom o por Twitter, que tenemos traducción simultánea al inglés, al español y al portugués. utilizando el link de interpretación en la conexión de Zoom. Por favor, conéctense por esa vía para escuchar en sus respectivos idiomas. Gracias a los que se conectan desde Latinoamérica, el Caribe y por supuesto a la audiencia estadounidense que nos acompaña hoy. Quiero comenzar insistiendo en que por favor envíen todas las preguntas, ideas y propuestas que tengan, tanto en el chat de Zoom como mediante Twitter, utilizando el hashtag Road to the Summit o Camino a la Cumbre. ¿Y por qué insisto en esto? Carla habló mucho sobre este tema, lo repito varias veces. Hoy nos acompañan en esta conversación para escuchar, pero también para alimentar el proceso oficial, y cuando me refiero al proceso, hablo del proceso oficial de la Cumbre de las Américas, el coordinador nacional de la cumbre, Kevin O'Reilly, que abrió el evento, pero además también nos acompaña la directora del secretariado de la cumbre, María Celina Conte, quien dará unas palabras de cierre y tiene como misión, entre otras, incorporar a la mayor cantidad de voces de la sociedad civil como sea posible. Tienen los oídos abiertos y desde el Atlantic Council vamos a esta conversación y todas las conversaciones que se generan alrededor de este evento a sistematizarlas, tanto sus comentarios como sus preguntas, para luego entregarlas a este proceso oficial. Así que es el momento de aprovechar y participar de la manera que podamos. And now, without further ado, I will change to English to introduce our high-level panel that will focus on the role of women in safeguarding democracy. The panel includes Panama's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Erika Moines, who is an example of female leadership across the hemisphere, Dr. Tamika Pert, the director of the National Shelter Unit at Jamaica's Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment, and Sport. Also, we have here my fellow Venezuelan Ambassador Isadora Zubillaga, the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs for the Interim Government of Venezuela. And finally, Ambassador Nirmala Badrising, the former Surinamese ambassador to the United States and former Minister of Foreign Affairs. I will start, as we have here a different representation and a very diverse panel, I want to ask this question to all panelists, but I would like to start with Minister Moines. Mr. Moines, welcome and thank you for joining. Across different democratic institutions, there is a need for greater female participation, and governments in the hemisphere have made positive strides in recent decades. But it has been enough. In your perspective, countries and subregions, what are some of the challenges that women are facing around politics, and what are some successes that should be replicated? Minister Moines, please.
Thank you, and greetings to everybody. So the first question, if it has been enough, and I just looked at these figures because I wanted to make sure as of today, since we've been having some elections in the last few weeks. So the representation for our planet, we have that heads of state or government is 12% for women, parliament 25%, and ministerial portfolios 20%. So if you think is 20%, for instance, on ministerial portfolios enough? So when we talk about democracies, you assume that democracy, right, is the voice of the people, you're represented by the people. Women represent half of the population, yet they are represented at 20%, 12%, or 20%, depending on where you are. So certainly has not been enough. I think we can all pat ourselves in the back because there has been progress, which we're aiming in the right direction, but not at enough speed. And we're not aiming for the goals. And there are several crises that if you think about, I just read a very interesting study carried out by the University of California and Oregon. That they research across 130 states, governments. And with those, women were more likely to sign any types of agreement that had to do with the environment. So probably we wouldn't even be talking about the environment crisis that we have in our hands if we had more women taking those roles and power in proper manners. So many of the questions that we are dealt with today, peace accords and solution of conflict, migration, all of those, when you look at the role of women, they tend to work across the aisle. I think the egos are kept in check, and there's a more availability and willingness to come to a solution, and one that is long lasting. There's a lot that we can do, and I think that the target needs to be set a lot higher than what we have right now. We can't just go in baby steps, because I think our planet right now demands a different type of leadership, and that leadership, and if we all believe in this road to democracy, we need to put ourselves, roll the sleeves, and actually make sure that the concrete actions are leading that way. And I think that one of the easiest ways to tackle that is with actually some form of accountability. All states, all governments should have this form of accountability. I think that when you go with, the United Nations and you hear those wonderful and colorful speeches, they all claim to say we support women, but the accountability, I think, is missing. So rather than saying what you are planning on doing, let's talk about the action plan that you have, and let's meet a year from now and figure out if you've actually come across and deliver as you should. I think the same goes when we talk about environment. I think environment and gender parity now go hand in hand. The solution is interlinked, and rather than this wonderful aspirational, let's just have a roadmap with clear steps along the way and meet a year from now and see how far we've come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Dr. Pert, any comments on the key challenges that women are facing through the hemisphere?
Okay, good morning again to the organizers, my fellow panelists, greetings from Jamaica. So I'm particularly proud to be a part of this panel discussion this morning. And I will try my best to share with you my thoughts on the stewardship of female empowerment in Caribbean politics overall. So we do know, as the minister said earlier, there has been some increase in women's representation in politics across the region, but it is really at a slower rate than the representation by our male counterparts. And when you look at the scholarly literature, it still points to the fact that Caribbean politics still has male structures, it still has male privileges, and this is supported by the cultural attitudes that stereotype women and their roles in leadership. Happily for us in Jamaica, in the last general election, we achieved the international benchmark for critical mass, as we now have more than 30% of women in the upper house. In the lower house, we are a little bit under 30%. However, this is currently the strongest presence of women and youth that we have seen in the parliament. Now, there are some tools that have helped us to improve the representation of women. And I point to the National Policy for Gender Equality in Jamaica that has been very critical to us building a more equitable society. Also, we have the Jamaica Women's Political Caucus, which leads in the advocacy to include more women in politics. And it is important to note that the government of Jamaica, under our current framework, we have identified this entity as one of the entities to provide monthly subventions to ensure that their work keeps going, because gender parity in political representation is important. We are also doing the review of the national gender policy, and with this review, our stakeholders have identified women political participation as one important area that has to be zoned in on in the revised policy. So I know that I'm on a time crunch, but there is findings from a report by Tresser and Bain in Women and Political Parties in 5 small states of the Commonwealth Caribbean that I think it is important to share, that when we're talking about political participation, we have to distinguish between political participation and political representation, because a lot of the times we use the terms interchangeably. Political participation really speaks to taking part in politics, while political representation more speaks to the institutions, the formal institutions. So if we're to look at it from this point, there are women who are predominantly workers of the parties who get men into the parliamentary structures. However, the further we go to the top, the less women we see. And thus, what this reflects is a Caribbean reality that women's ongoing struggle to reorganize gendered identities and roles continues to be a space that needs further assistance. So it is a complex, it is challenging, and it continues to be that space for women who wish to run for election and for political office. However, there are still some promising practices that can be incorporated. For example, gender-aware political codes of conduct seems promising, and strengthening the women's arms of the political parties to be more than just fundraising bodies, but to require real restructuring of power within party frameworks. And quotas, as though they are very controversial, they're still recommended. And then there is the need for continuous sensitization to the country on the benefits of having more women in politics as a foundation of democracy. So I'm looking forward to the rest of the panel discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bird. We agree that with the women participation in different areas of the society across the hemisphere is super complex and challenging. And that's one of the main reasons why are we here listening to you and bringing voices of women leaders to this international panel. So thank you for your insightful comments. Ambassador Subillaga, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Diego. And special thanks to the Atlantic Council for hosting this event, because you have been at the forefront of empowering women to safeguard our freedoms. And I am pleased to be part of that collective effort to advance women's participation in the region and particularly in my country. And of course, I have to talk about Venezuela, because as we meet here, Venezuelans are still suffering and suffering a lot. The humanitarian situation, which continues to deteriorate, the economy has collapsed. We will end up this year as the poorest country in the hemisphere. Human rights abuses persist. The Venezuelan Amazon is being destroyed. And as in every conflict, the crisis always disproportionately affects women. Venezuelan women find themselves the target of abuse, harassment, arbitrary detention, gender-based violence, affecting the work of the civil society activists in the country, as well as women participating in parliament and advocates in the diaspora. So despite all of this, and probably despite bearing the worst part of the suffering, Venezuelan women, from politics to civil society inside Venezuela and outside Venezuela, have risen to the challenge. And as a woman advocate myself and my role as representative of the interim government, I get to see the inspiring work firsthand. I've seen the advocates trying to denounce the human rights abuses. I'm sorry, I have a little bit of a cold. I've seen the women advocates denouncing crimes against humanity, the release, the ones that are asking for the release of their family members who are political prisoners at home and abroad, women participating in the peace talks in Mexico. I have met the brave and the brilliant women who are at the forefront of the Venezuelan struggle. And I'm sorry. And as we need to secure the women participation and representation at all levels of policymaking, the Venezuelan talks in Mexico, mediated by Norway, are a great opportunity. We have 2 women delegates representing the unitary platform of the Venezuelan unitary platform, and this is promising, and one could see it as a success. But we need to see far greater representation at the negotiation table, as Minister Moines mentioned earlier. We have to aim high, and we are looking and striving for gender parity. But we can see a 30% or 40% increase as a stepping stone to get to this goal. So, one thing is for sure, I could go on also to talk about the platform of the Women for Venezuela, for Democracy in Venezuela, as well as the network that the Atlantic Council has launched. And I think that it's important that we can unify all of these efforts with the efforts inside Venezuela, because there are many platforms of amazing Venezuelan women also, fighting every day. But one thing is for sure, and with this I conclude my first part, is that the crucial contribution of Venezuelan women will definitely result on a more durable political solution and a secure, free, and democratic Venezuela. Thank you, Diego.
Thank you, Ambassador Suillaga. And for sure, by securing more participation of women in Venezuelan politics, will secure, as you said, a long-standing and stable and prosperous country, and therefore that will resonate and reverberate in the region, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
I'm thinking about the Caribbean, I'm thinking about Colombia, Brazil, and other countries. Thank you, Ambassador. So, Ambassador Bad Rising, thank you very much for joining today. Any initial thoughts on the importance of women participation in politics and the challenges that they are facing nowadays in the region? You're muted, Ambassador.
Thank you so much. Let me also thank Atlantic Council and State Department for organizing this first public event and for being part of this panel. First of all, I would like to echo the same sentiments that have been put forward by Minister Moines and also by Tamika, indicating that although, yes, we have made considerable stride in being represented in different political bodies, but I do think that different challenges prevent us to be really involved in decision-making power. So I think within the Caribbean, and I would like to focus more on the Caribbean from my perspective, I think challenges are from a different nature. We have to look into the political aspects because many of the countries have delivered different political systems, different electoral systems, and different governance structures as well. Now, other elements that we definitely need to take into account are social and cultural aspects. When I talk about social and cultural aspects, and some of the previous members of the panel have taken that into account, dealing with cultural norms and patterns, the negative stereotyping, the gender roles, the aspects of ethnopolitics, and also the aspect of patriarchal structures in politics and beyond politics, also in government, are facts where elements where we should pay attention to, because those are the elements where gradually changes need to be made. If I take, for instance, my own country as an example, we have 30 plus political parties, and from those parties, only 2 women are represented as political leaders. In Parliament, 51 members of Parliament, and we have 15 female members. So we have not even met the benchmark that we have been aspiring of 30%. I think that in our region, we have seen that some of the affirmative measures that have been propagated for the last 20, 30 years have been successful to some extent, not in all countries. But affirmative measures in terms of instituting gender quotas, but also striving to bring about gender parity has shown that those are very first steps that could help us in our strive to gain more prominence in not only in terms of political participation, but also to be actively involved in decision-making, because I do think that decision-making power is of high relevance to really make a change in terms of bringing about more equality, but through the engagement of women as well, more sustainable development. There is, and I would like to mention that we have seen that so far, 10 states from Latin America and the Caribbean, which is about 1/3 of the region, have attained and surpassed the 30% threshold of female representation. If we look at the various studies that have been conducted by numerous institutions, and I want to refer in this, well, at this moment of time, to studies of the IPU, and they indicate, IPU has indicated that in the global rankings, 5 countries from Latin America and the Caribbean are among the top 20 countries in the global rankings of female representation in parliament. And these are Mexico, Grenada, Bolivia, Costa Rica, and Argentina. Their representation is in the top 40%. And 4 of these countries have had legislated gender quota. The exception is Grenada, where, and we can discuss that maybe later when we are looking into the specificities of the countries. Grenada did not have any instituted gender quota, but apparently in their society there is a stronger awareness of the importance of women's engagement in development. So I'll stop for now because I have to be mindful of the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. I would like to go back to you, Minister Moines. Democracy is, of course, at its strongest when it is inclusive of all people and safeguarding the rights of all, including, of course, women. And challenges to democracy and women do not just exist in one country or region. There are roadblocks across the hemisphere. So, question for you is, how can governments work together to collectively solve some of those challenges facing women?
Thank you. I think that's why we should all make it as part of foreign policy, a gender-focused specific, to make sure that we're not only promoting locally, but we're also making sure that we're endorsing that behavior from other governments, as certainly what has been done is not enough. I would go back to my initial comment on accountability. We need to come up with a system international where we are making sure that every single government is actually making the steps, and it's taking steps in the right direction. And there are a number, I think, of ideas, both on the positive and a little bit sort of on the making sure that we are aware of what's happening. There are 12 governments right now where there's not one single woman, even at a ministerial level. We should be talking about it. And in the same way that even here, when we have boards of directors where no women are represented or not enough, I take personally the task of naming those companies that are not including women at the international level. We should be talking about those governments that are not including one single woman, even at a ministerial level. There's also positive actions that we can take, because if the right environment is not there, then it's sort of an artificial idea to say, well, I want women to be at leadership positions, but they are not going to have the care or the support that they need. Women typically are in charge of care for the elderly and for children. And if you don't have this right set of care and legislation to support that, then it's really difficult for a woman to take those multiple roles without the proper environment. And there's also campaigns that we can take. UN Women, for instance, is really good and advocate in campaigning the right manner in terms of self-confidence, understanding self-belief too, because first you have to attract women to even have the idea, okay, I want to do this. And for that, so that role of not only getting women elected, but also first attracting the women to get interested, energized, and to participate, so we have more women involved, and then the care and support that they need throughout their roles. Social media, for instance, tends to be very aggressive and violent. I mean, there are a number of things that we can work across governments to make sure that the right framework is there. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. And I would like to go back to you, Dr. Pert. Minister Moines just shared with us some of the actions, specific actions in the international level, but I'd like to hear from you. What about in the local and federal level, specifically in the Caribbean? What can be done? You're muted, Doctor.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that. So I'm happy that that question was posed to me, because historically for us in the Caribbean region, and I have to go into this part because it is unrelated but also connected to our regional politics and regional challenges that we do have. Historically, in times of crisis, when there is anxiety and uncertainty, as we are seeing now in the pandemic, our culture provides hope, comfort, inspiration, and togetherness. Now, in academia, there is a term that's called cultural taxation, and this captures how people of color assume extra duties without being compensated. But for us in the Caribbean, cultural taxation takes on another meaning as we protect democracy at the local and the national level. Cultural taxation for us, it's really how community development has been used to guard free and fair elections, freedom of movement and assembly, speech, expression, and religious belief, rule of law, and other basic human rights. I say this because our social and cultural structures do promote the idea that this lobbying, this rights awareness that has to be done, it has to be something that's squarely at the feet of women, and it has to be something that we revisit in how we promote gender equality. Now, in terms of the fundamental pillars of democracy and good governance, we know that the right to vote and the right to stand for election are key principles. However, we see that women face multiple obstacles and they undermine their participation in the process overall. Some of the challenges that women face, they place them at a disadvantage, and the biggest one in the room today is financing an election, and this financing capacity that women must explore, this impacts how they engage with the political process. And going outside of that, there is also some new realities such as the digital media that has further complexed the portrayal of women in politics, and all these serve to undermine women's participation. So democracy in theory provides for the well-being of all, but practically we have to revisit how it is done to ensure that women, their views and their assets are taken to the table. Because once we have the risk that women remain marginalized and how they are engaged in the process, then this creates an inequality issue of access and also the outcomes of politics. But it is not just a matter of numbers, and that's where we also have to shift the national and local discussion. Gender equality is not just about numbers in politics. It's about cultivating that environment at the local level. When in Caribbean politics, the bar where men go and drink rum is an important part of where politics is done. We have to have a cultivating environment where women are free to walk into these locally male-dominated spaces so that they can access their entitlements as human beings. Now, what can the government do? We spoke about quotas, and I'd really hope that we take on the conversation later, because some claim that they're undemocratic, but there is no doubt that quotas, as the ambassador spoke of earlier, have made meaningful impacts in in countries in the Caribbean that were just highlighted. Now, there is also the need to have measurable indicators when we talk about gender equality and political participation, and that is the work of the government. I spoke about the National Policy for Gender Equality in Jamaica, and we have our monitoring and evaluation framework that tracks the progress as we go along. Now, there are some countries right now too that they provide help to women who are going in election. And it could be from a structural standpoint where if the party has more than 30% of either sex, then that party gets some amount of state assistance. And we look at more complex problems of the need for women in their personal capacities to be married to wealthy men or to be from very wealthy backgrounds or backgrounds that have integrated them in the political framework from a very long time. These kinds of women are women who are at a disadvantage. And so as we talk about what can the government do, it has to be the government's job to use intersectionality to guide how gender equality is done in politics. Because women are at a disadvantage generally, but all women have their unique type of disadvantage, and that is the role of government to dissect the issues as we go along. So Diego, I see you nodding. I know I'm going over my time, but I guess later on, I will share some other experiences from the international space that government can take the lead on.
Thank you, Dr. Purden. And there is so much to say about all these issues. We could be speaking like weeks and months about all the challenges, but also focusing on the opportunities that we have as a hemisphere to tackle some of these challenges together. So we're running out of time because we have had an incredible conversation. I want to pose the last question for all the panelists. And here is my question, and it's regarding, of course, the Summit of the Americas. The upcoming summit is more important than ever, given the challenges facing the hemisphere. As we have discussed, key to tackling them will be greater female participation in all democratic institutions and beyond. Based on this, what do you see as an outcome for the summit that will help us reach the type of inclusion needed? What are each of your countries and sub-regions working to make female participation a priority during and after the summit? And I would like to start with Ambassador Subillaga.
Yes, Diego, thank you. Well, the Summit of the Americas offers a critical opportunity to showcase US, the United States as the host, but also Canadian leadership on democracy and human rights, including women's rights. It is also an opportunity, I think, and we've discussed this earlier in other conversations, for the US to revitalize its relationships and partnerships with regional actors across Latin America and the Caribbean, who are, by the way, heroically insisting on a democratic future for their countries, for our countries. And I think that this is some of the things that Deputy Assistant Secretary Kevin O'Reilly mentioned at the beginning. Since the US is the host country, I truly hope that the summit and will provide a platform for a new regional approach to democracy, which requires that we, the people of the hemisphere, not only speak boldly on behalf of democratic principles, but also commit to a meaningful partnership with the democratic movements, the citizens of the Americas, the women-led organizations, the people that are working day in and day out for democracy, for freedom, mobilized on the streets, fighting for their rights, providing for the basic needs in their communities, insisting on a free and open media, collecting evidence for human rights abuses. I mean, we have to defend democracy on every corner of the hemisphere. This is not a fight that you do over the internet or only on the streets or in a discussion in Washington. This is a fight that every single citizen in the Americas has to take as their own. So, supporting people in the ground from Buenos Aires to Bogota and Managua and Havana. And I'm sure that that is the only way. And with this I end, because I know that you don't have much time, but I think that it's important that we as citizens of the Americas realize that if we're going to counter the destabilizing influence of anti-democratic actors like Russia and China and Iran in the region, I can tell you from our own country, we have them all. So I think it's very important that we realize that. And of course, as a Venezuelan, last but not least, I think that the summit also should have a very important spotlight on Venezuela. Venezuela should be at the heart of the discussion, because we see clearly that the downfall of democracy in Venezuela and the world's failure to address the solution has set a very dangerous precedent across the region. And we see dictators taking note from the Castro Maduro booklet or playbook. And so, we think that the summit can counterweight to this. We are happy to be part of it. I think that I can speak on behalf of many people and be able to build the prosperity that goes hand in hand with democracy collectively. And well, this is how we can have the best neighborhood in the planet, which is called the Americas.
Gracias, embajadora. Ambassador Bad Rising, final thoughts, please.
Thank you, Diego. I think all the other speakers have also have already indicated, and Ambassador Riley started off his remarks with the intentions, by sharing with us what the United States, as the organizer of the 9th Summit of the Americas, would like to achieve with this, with the upcoming summit. Now, during our conversations, many of the pitfalls of democracy have been discussed. And I do think that it has been clear to our discussion that the summit will provide a fantastic opportunity to foster stronger partnerships with all countries of the region. It would give an opportunity to listen to the concerns, the interests and the needs of the various countries, and also to pay attention to the specific complexities of each and every region. The end goal has to be that stronger strategic partnerships can be established, and that at the end of the road, that we have to ensure that follow-up mechanisms can be put in place, because we have had 8 other summits already, and it should not be a summit for every 3 years and then we try to recap what has been happening during the previous summits, but try to encompass all the positive outcomes from the previous summits and to build upon what we want for the Americas, and that is a more prosperous, more socially equal, equitable, and prosperous hemisphere. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Final words, Minister Moines.
Thank you. I think that you need to start, you need to get to the summit with a clear plan of what you're committing, with an actual action plan. On Panama's behalf, we're working on sanctioned political violence towards women. We're working on reforms, electoral reforms, to achieve gender parity in the next election. We're working, as I mentioned, the framework for care for the elderly, for children, for women that are working. It's very important. We're working on all that. But my point, I think, is when we think about the summit, rather than the speech, I think we should all be paying attention to 2 things: how and when. If you say that you believe in women, how and when are you going to do it? I think that this actually having a clear commitment with a roadmap that we can look next year and then look back and figure out how much progress is key. I am absolutely convinced that women are the only credible threat to the status quo. So those hard decisions that needed to be made if we are to change the course of the planet, there's certain that are benefiting from that status quo, that are favoring the political resistance or the political inaction for those actions that we need right now. So if we fail women, we're failing democracy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Powerful words. I want to also thank all the participants for sharing your thoughts and experience in this amazing couple of panels we had. Y ahora, como prometimos, quisiera darle la palabra a María Celina Conte, quien es la directora del Secretariado de la Cumbre de las Américas, para dar unas palabras de cierre. Adelante, María Celina, y bienvenida.
Muchísimas gracias, Diego. It is a real honor to be here, delighted with the development of this enriching conversation. Good morning, everyone. Mr. Kevin O'Reilly, National Summit Coordinator, Jason Marshak, Director at the Atlantic Council, and his team. And good morning to such distinguished panelists and moderators. I'm grateful for this opportunity to talking to you on behalf of the summit secretariat in its capacity, as you mentioned, as technical secretariat and institutional memory of the summits of the Americas process. Inclusive and multi-stakeholder exchanges such as these greatly contribute to our efforts of informing discussions in preparation for the next summit in coordination with the chair, the US government, making the summit respond in a concrete way of people's most urgent needs requires not only political will, but also the development of opportunities for participation with all the stakeholders of the summit process. With regard to the theme of the first panel, challenges and solutions for democracy, several key issues have been brought up, including as main challenges to democracy, citizen confidence in democracy as the main aspect to prevent democratic backsliding. Also, the issue of inequality, including gender inequality and inclusion, as key in this context of democratic backsliding. Any solution delivered needs to be inclusive, incorporating women, youth, Afro-descendant, and among other marginalized and vulnerable groups. In terms of technology, information and democracy, we hear about how social media has allowed the youth to better organize, exchange, and to communicate with the leadership more directly. It is important then to promote digital inclusion. And in terms of the need of building better debates of democracy, simple access to democracy is not, to technology is not enough. As we heard, we must give people the tools to be active citizens. And here is also key that communicators and policymakers promote interests of people in democracy, reaching out to them in tailoring the message to different groups. And regarding collaboration, each actor operating by itself is not sufficient to protect democracy. The summit is also, it's about promoting international solidarity, collaboratively, and multi-stakeholder approaches, and we need to harness that power. It is also, I think, important to remember that despite the commitments of the states of the region with democracy, which is enshrined in the principles of the Charter of the OEAs and of the Inter-American Democratic Charter, as mentioned by the national coordinator, our democracies still face several challenges. Although there have been significant advances in our hemisphere, the challenges democracies are confronted with continue to deepen the disenchantment of citizens in the institutions that govern them. We have seen an acceleration of this disenchantment in the last decade. It coincides with a process of gradual deterioration of essential aspects for democratic resilience, such as the freedom of expression, the integrity of the media, judicial independence, the division of power, added to the high levels of corruption and impunity, with their implications for the democratic system of our region. The defense of representative democracy that is highlighted in the Inter-American Democratic Charter demands an active participation of everyone, from grassroots organizations to youth to international entities. And at the Summit Secretariat, we have developed several spaces for exchange aimed at outlining possible responses to democratic backsliding In a recent, for example, virtual dialogue with experts from the region entitled Balance of Power and the Safeguarding of Democracy, Reflections 20 years after the adoption of the Inter-American Democratic Charter, the main recommendation that actually emerged was the development of an action plan, a sort of an action plan as one of the results of the summit, which would be focused on preventive aspects of democratic protection while promoting technical cooperation to foster cultural changes with more civic education and greater knowledge of our democratic charter. The strengthening of the restorative and preventive measure functions of the charter having also widely addressed. In 2021, at the multi-stakeholder discussions that we were able to carry out, convene, and that we think should also be favored with a view towards the next summit. The leadership of the chair, the US government, in the realization of the Summit of the Americas, but also the Summit of Democracies in December, reflects its first commitment, reinforce its commitment to democratic government, strengthening democratic governance, the fight against corruption, the protection of human rights, inclusiveness, among other aspects. All of these, I would like to highlight that have been issues that have been present in the Summit of the Americas process throughout the years from the very beginning. However, the current context of recovery from the pandemic represent an opportunity to regain confidence in institutions and democracy, to provide a new platform for democracy with an active participation of the summit stakeholders. Now, with regards to the second panel, and I will be briefly, the rol o el rol de las mujeres en la vigencia de la democracia, se han destacado varios temas, incluyendo la falta de representación política de las mujeres y especialmente en los más altos niveles de toma de decisión. La importancia de las cuotas de género como medidas provisionales, pero sobre todo también se mencionó el sistema de paridad. La necesidad de contar con indicadores que permitan medir los avances. La importancia de un enfoque de igualdad de género, pero también el de la interseccionalidad en estos esfuerzos, así como los impactos desproporcionados de la pandemia en el ejercicio de los derechos de las mujeres. Asociados a estas temáticas, quisiera también recordar que a pesar de los avances importantísimos que ha tenido nuestra región en materia de igualdad de género y derechos de las mujeres, al ser por un lado la región del mundo en desarrollo que presenta el más robusto marco jurídico y político en la materia, y en la región en la que se cuenta con 9 países que tienen normas de paridad, 9 países de América Latina, nuestra región presenta un déficit de representación de mujeres en la democracia. De ello también dan cuenta la Comisión Interamericana de Mujeres y las misiones de observación electoral de la OEA, cuyos informes abordan las múltiples barreras que enfrentan las mujeres en los procesos electorales y en el acceso a los cargos electos. Y en este sentido, la ampliación de los derechos políticos de las mujeres en la región se ha mantenido como un tema central en la agenda de la Comisión Interamericana de Mujeres y en la misma OEA. Con la paridad, América Latina se ha posicionado como la región más avanzada del mundo en materia de regulación normativa y protección de derechos de representación y participación política de las mujeres. El reto está realmente en concientizar la voluntad política y llevar esta paridad a todos los espacios del poder político, legislativo, ejecutivo, judicial, como también el poder local. La Secretaría de Cumbres viene dedicando importantes esfuerzos para fortalecer la participación de organizaciones de mujeres de la región en el proceso de cumbres, para asegurar que sus voces y necesidades sean de las mujeres sean y estén presentes, ¿no? Así como de las poblaciones que se encuentran en mayor vulnerabilidad, entre las cuales también están sobre representadas las mujeres, a fin de que puedan llevar sus voces y participar en la discusión regional hacia la próxima cumbre. Sobre las poblaciones en situación de vulnerabilidad, su participación efectiva en la toma de decisiones ayudará definitivamente en la construcción de sociedades más resilientes y democráticas. Y el sistema interamericano, en este caso, provee herramientas clave para apoyar justamente el desarrollo de soluciones con el apoyo de las entidades del Grupo de Trabajo Conjunto de Cumbres, que son 13, incluyendo la OEA y otras 12 internacionales y regionales. Antes de finalizar, quisiera también destacar que el proceso de cumbres es un proceso en el que, además de la preparación, lo cual es clave en el momento en que nos encontramos, la fase de seguimiento, implementación de los mandatos e iniciativas que emanen de la misma es sumamente relevante, y en el que la participación también de todos los actores, gobierno, sociedad civil, actores sociales, entidades multilaterales, es fundamental. Con esto termino y agradezco y felicito enormemente nuevamente al Atlantic Council por generar espacios participativos y multiactor como este. Igualmente agradezco a cada una de las destacadas expositoras y expositores, moderadores, por sus invaluables aportes, y aprovecho para invitar a todas aquellas organizaciones de la sociedad civil y actores sociales que han podido seguir este excelente encuentro a que puedan registrarse con la Secretaría de Cumbres en el caso de que no lo estén, a fin de que puedan participar a lo largo del proceso hacia la 9ª cumbre y más allá. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much, Maria Celina, and thank you everyone for joining today. We'll continue including diverse voices around different key areas in the upcoming months, so stay tuned for more around the road to the summit. Thank you.